Good evening, good evening, good evening, and welcome to In the Ladies Room with Nikki and Michelle. How is everyone doing on this beautiful fall day or evening? We invite you in to join with us on this lovely discussion. Well, it might be lovely to some, but not to others. But on this discussion, well, let's just say lively, because that's what it says. That's what I put in the description. It's a lively discussion on divorce. But before we get started, I would like to just remind you all to hit like, share. We are streaming live on Facebook, YouTube, and Periscope. We hope that you will all invite others to come into the room and share your questions, comments, and affirmations. I would like to give you a brief update. I realized last week that we had a lot more listeners than we had thought we did, and that some of you who are sharing the post, which I'm happy, and I want you to continue to do so. Sometimes your comments are being caught on those pages, but we don't necessarily see them. So if you would like for them to be seen, you would probably be best to just log on from my particular page for all of you who follow me or all of you who follow Michelle. So, but anyway, we're going to get going with the topic. I'm just going to give you a brief description and we'll get started. Before I do, I'm going to just start this new trend for today. Well, no, we'll keep it going from now on. For you ladies that I can see making comments early on, we want to start off by just saying hello to you all. Crystal,
Hi, Crystal. It's been a long time, girl. I miss you.
your mic is extremely loud, Michelle.
I'm sorry.
Okay, so hi Beatrice, hi Crystal, hi Lolita. Welcome to In the Ladies Room with Nikki and Michelle. Again, put any comments, questions, or affirmations that you would like for us to share, and we'll try and get to those and highlight them. Hey Tina Jackson. Hey
Hi, Tina. Hi, Angela.
Angela Vora, same person. But anyway, so let's just get started with the topic at hand, and it's about divorce and the effects on on families. According to the American Psychological Association, between 40 and 50% of marriages end in divorce each year, which is pretty high, and it almost scares away people who are considering getting married. But that is the current statistic for divorce in this country right now. So we would like to talk about and shine a light on some of the things that may lead to divorce and how it impacts the family. But before I do any of that, I'm going to let Michelle go ahead because I know she likes to go ahead and, give her a little introduction while I go and grab a little bit of water. So, Michelle, have the spotlight, doll. I'll be right back.
Oh, just say you had to go get water. Don't try to put me on blast.
I am putting
No, but I'm anxious for you to go get your water and come right back because I'm really ready to just dive right in. I see so many of my friends tonight. Hi, Tina. I said hi, Tina. Hi, Landy. Hi, Michelle McDonald, Kim, Vanessa. Vanessa, we miss you. We were looking for you last week. Come to find out you were one of the people on another page. Hi, Martina. Hi to all my lady friends. Hi, Beatrice. I know I saw her. Beatrice die. She's a faithful viewer. We love seeing all of you. So we're gonna talk about it tonight, ladies. I know the topic is supposed to be on marriage, but it really doesn't have to be exclusively marriage. I really want to talk about when whole relationships, because some of us were in relationships that felt like marriages, just without the piece of paper, as they call it. But as we start to talk about this, I want you to tell me what are some deal breakers. Because when Nikki told me about our next topic, I started to think to myself, first of all, marriages are so different today from I think when they were when, let's say, our parents got together. We had people in relationships and they stayed at all costs and just kept the family together. And I don't know, dare I say, even turned looked the other way when infidelities were happening or taking place, whatever the case may be. But we know that relationships and marriages nowadays are completely different. There's a part of me that feels like, have women become so independent now that they feel like one wrong move and I'm out the door and I could do that? Are we going into marriages nowadays frivolously? Like, well, if he do something to make me mad, I'll just leave. Is that it? What are we doing, ladies? Let's talk about it. What are we doing?
Okay, well, according to onlinetherapy.com, some of the common reasons that people have in marriages or have broken marriages is like lack of mutual understanding and support and trust, lack of compatibility, lack of mutual cooperation, lack of commitment and sense of responsibility, lack of communication and time. Here's a big one I think that people don't think about a lot, but ego clashes. And that will kind of lend to what you were talking about, Michelle, about women now almost feeling like maybe they don't need to be married because they're independent. But some of the other ones are infidelity or breach of trust, which is a big one. Marital expectations, abuse, marital rape. That's a very big one on abuse. Um, Inability to effectively cope with stressors and pressures of marriage. Um, Third person involvement and chaos, which is big because this is what we talked about once before. When you start involving friends and family members in the process of your marriage, continuous misbehavior with each other, marital crisis, inability to hold each other's hands in decease or times of need. So those are a few of the things that are
That
kind
was
of,
a long list.
it was a long list. It's a lot. But here's one that they did not list that I kind of always feel like is a big deal breaker for a lot of people that people I think that they get into relationships and they don't think about it. But that is the rearing of children. So many people have differences in the way they believe children should be reared. And when they get into a marriage and they didn't discuss it prior to, sometimes it causes lots of friction in a marriage. So what do you think, Michelle?
Child, I don't know when it comes to kids. I don't have no kids, so that's not really one of my concerns. But call me crazy, but do you think it's more of a reality or this actually happens that people don't talk about these things before they talk about getting married?
I think that nowadays people talk about it more than they did before. But I think that most people, they just get so infatuated with being in love and the idea of being in a relationship. Once they find someone they enjoy and they, you know, like being with, they don't think about all the other things that marriage needs to survive and thrive. So they just go ahead with the getting on, because people think at the top things like paying bills. Can we afford to be married? And so once we get over that, we forget about all the other things that matter in a marriage, like raising kids. But read
Right.
time comment.
But here's the thing. I really think that a lot of times what ends up happening too is that people are fantasizing about what they think their marriage is going to be like. And then when they get into it, the reality is so different from what they imagine. Because I think, and let's face it, well, not every little girl. I'm not going to put that out there because I don't believe that. But a lot of girls grow up thinking they're going to get married, they're going to have this fine handsome husband, and then they're going to get into this relationship and they're gonna have the white picket fence and the 3.2 kids and a dog, you know, and this whole fantasy. And then you get into it and reality rears its ugly head. And I saw Vanessa said finances. Kim said a deal. Tell me more about that, Kim. I saw your message before. Deal breaker for me is getting emotionally entangled. Dig with that word entanglement. Emotionally entangled with another. Is that somebody outside the relationship, or you don't want to be emotionally help me understand where you were going with that one. But finances is a big deal. Finances is a big
That's
deal.
big. But it sounds like the emotional entanglement Kim is talking about is outside. Well, here she's answering it here. I think. Okay, wait. Read that one, please.
I think the discussion around having children is had, maybe not how the children are going to be raised. Yeah, well, having them, that's the first part, right? Now, who taking care of them? How you, who doing the hard part?
Right, 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 right.
You know,
I think a lot of times people think things as simple as discipline. For some people, that's a big deal breaker. If you discipline one way and I discipline another way, that can cause a lot of strife in a marriage. But as far as Kim was saying, the emotional entanglement with another, I believe she's saying outside the marriage because I
I
know,
think, but I wasn't sure.
I mean, she could clarify it, but for me, that would be, I mean, it would be a deal breaker because the emotional, I mean, cheating comes in so many different forms. And
Outside the relationship, a coworker. Okay, yeah.
yeah,
Yeah,
because,
that's the problem.
yeah, because cheating don't necessarily have to mean that you're into an intimate relationship all the time, even with the opposite sex or the object of desire for you. It could mean that you have emotional with girlfriends that are just too much for a man or a woman to bear in their relationship. Like you might spend an enormous amount of time with girlfriends, and that might not be acceptable to your mate. So you never know. Oh, there you go.
Yeah,
Hmm.
yeah, I get that one.
Yep. So yes. So when we talk about divorce, it's so like you look. I like to use your phrase, Michelle. It's so many layers.
Well, it is. It is. It's a real. It's a legitimate emotional roller coaster, right? Because you have all these high highs and then these low lows, and so I started off when you went to go get your water, Nikki. I was asking the ladies like, "What are your deal breakers? When do you call it a day?" Because I'm telling you, ever since you mentioned this topic to me, I've been on a roller coaster myself with all these thoughts jumping in and out of my head, comparing marriages today to the way they were many, many years ago. I think our expectations of marriage has changed. Our outlook on marriages have changed. I think that there's so many other factors because I'm sure I even saw it on the news. When we get out of COVID, divorce attorneys gonna be busy.
Yes, Lord.
They're gonna be busy because when you really they say you don't really know somebody until you live with them. Well, that's one thing, but now be stuck in the house with them for 24/7. I hope y'all get along because if you don't, it's not gonna be pretty.
Mhm.
Um, so yeah, so there's the emotional issue, there's the finance. Oh, and that's the other thing. So okay, somebody gonna have to keep me focused today because I really am all over the place.
I'll try.
What about, because I had this conversation with a girlfriend, what about, we were talking about finances, what about women who say that it's the man's responsibility to pay for everything, meaning never pay mortgage, never pay rent, never pay for anything. That's the man's role. Is that realistic?
To be honest with you, for African American families, I never thought that was a really realistic thing, unless you were married or with a man who was wealthy enough to do that. I
Right.
think it's always had to be a case where there's give and take. We're sharing responsibilities and finances because we just could not afford to just pay for everything. So I think that's a thing of the past that maybe people wish could be for us, but I really don't accept that as a real way of living because even if you could afford it, to in my imagination, if
Hmm.
if I could afford to help out my husband, I don't care how much money he got. This is ours. So if
Right.
I could help out, I'm gonna help out. Why am I keeping all of mine and letting him spend all of his?
So here's the conclusion that I'm coming to. It really sounds like, and ladies, chime in on this. I need your feedback on this. I really feel like every relationship is so personal, right? And every relationship is going to be different. And I think you really have to focus in on the dynamic of you and your partner, whoever that is, to determine how things are going to work or function in your household. Because everything that work in my household may not work in yours.
Mhm.
But you know, how me and my husband operate could be completely different from how you and your husband operate. So I think that's how you have to really approach that.
Mhm. I agree. Could you catch this one?
When you get married and have a covenant relationship where two become one, if one gets emotionally involved outside of that union, it breaches that covenant. I agree with that.
I agree.
I agree with that. And that actually kind of reinforces something that Kim said right before. She said it doesn't mean sex, right? The emotional entanglement doesn't mean sex. Actually, she said, actually, if you're gonna cheat, I prefer it's just sex instead of becoming emotionally involved.
Right, right, right. That's it. I highlighted.
Yeah,
True. That was true because the emotional part is the part where you get people who, they really become dependent on somebody else to fulfill needs that really a partner should be fulfilling.
right.
So, I mean, I kind of agree with Kim on that. I really agree with that. Yeah. Um, all this, I kind of would like a little bit more explanation on that one, Stacy. All this expectations is extra. I mean, we did talk about that before about the expectation part of life in general. That sometimes, when you go through life expecting something, there's always a possibility of disappointment instead of just allowing things to move organically and just do what they do and deal with the outcome as they come. So I mean, I get that part. Um,
Discipline can especially be a problem in blended families. That I could say.
oh yes, big time, big time. Look,
I
and
think even more so there because now you kind of sort of dealing with a situation where it's like, oh well, you're not her mother, you're not his father, now you're dealing with that whole dynamic, which
mhm.
I don't know.
Look, I can tell you from my experience how that was. Me and my husband, we had the same, pretty much the same kind of ideas about disciplining and raising children. But when it came to my stepson, who oftentimes, would go to his mother's to visit on, when we were raising him, he would go to his mother's to visit, and their discipline was totally different than ours. And so, although me and my husband had agreement on our discipline styles, when he came back home after being over there for an amount of days or a weekend or a week sometimes, it was like we had to reprogram him from being over at his mother's because it was so different.
Right.
So yeah, it didn't really cause too much of a big problem in my husband's and now in my marriage because thank God we had the
You were
same
on the same page.
right. But it did have some kind of interruption sometimes with me and my stepson until he was old enough to understand that it wasn't that I was being hard on him, but I was trying to raise him up. So yeah.
I get that. Well,
Hmm.
I don't really, but
Mentally, you get it.
yeah,
Gotcha. Uh-huh.
it's realistic. And so, oh, she made that comment when I was talking about households that believe that the man should pay for everything.
Hmm.
So Keisha said, you see, Keisha, you should never compare your marriage or relationship with your past. That's where we go wrong. I've learned firsthand you should never start a new relationship until you completely heal from your divorce mentally.
Oh my God, if that's not true, I don't know what to say.
I mean,
Because that's it wasn't mentioned as part of the study that I just read, but that's a big piece of why people get divorced because they bring baggage from one relationship into the next. How your partner dealt with you in your last relationship is not necessarily how your new partner is going to deal with you unless you kind of sometimes we find we have a habit of looking for the same person in different people. So that's why she's so right when she says you got to heal mentally, emotionally, and sometimes even physically from your last partner, because you're looking for what you're used to, and you need to kind of sometimes get rid of what you were used to, because that's why it didn't work. But
I also think a lot of the challenges comes from the fact that, sometimes a lot of people are looking for relationships and ultimately marriages to fulfill a space in themselves that really can't be fulfilled by any outside factors. You got to be good with yourself. Nikki, you and I were talking about that the other day. You got to be okay. You got to like yourself enough to be by yourself,
yourself.
because you can't expect somebody else to come in and try to make you happy when you can't even make yourself happy. So I think that's where a lot of the challenges also come from. Like, you trying to get somebody to make you happy when you can't make yourself happy. If you can make yourself happy, then you can potentially be with somebody else and cohabitate and make each other happy. But you can't go into a relationship or a marriage expecting that person to do it for you. I'm a
Exactly.
firm believer about that. And then a lot of times you get those rebound situations. So, to Keisha's point, you get those rebound situations, you fresh off a divorce and go right running head first into the next relationship. And that don't mean you no good either. And so now you kind of right back where you started.
Mhm. If
So
you read Vanessa's for me.
you have to be willing to put in the work. You got to do your work to keep the marriage alive. It's not always peaches and cream. Just remember to respect one another's opinion. And also, in laws are also a big problem in some marriages.
Yes. Big.
So that's interesting, right? Now, when we say in laws, are we talking about parents? Or are we talking about even like siblings and everything? I've been blessed. I have to say, I've been blessed. I get along famously with my in-laws. Look, right now, I got along with my old in-laws too.
Mhm.
You
I
know,
think it's a whole family, because when you marry somebody, you pretty much intertwine or join in with an entire family. I mean, thank God I got along with my in-laws, still do. But a lot of times, you'd be surprised at nightmare stories you hear about in-laws.
right?
And when you have a big family, sisters, brothers, sometimes it could wreak hell on your marriage, because I really wanted to wait a little bit until I shift gears to this segment, but I guess we're leading here, so we kind of might as well go. But that was part of the discussion that I wanted to talk about, is what it does to the entire family unit. Because it's not just when you divorce somebody, especially, excuse me, my breathing is difficult today. But when you divorce somebody, you pretty much sometimes divorce an entire family. So relationships that you've had with in-laws may be ending, with stepchildren, children, all kinds of things happen in a relationship that ends, that is almost like death, not just to that couple, but to an entire family or even friends. I mean, how many times have you had friends or relatives that who've gotten divorced, and for some reason you're not friends with their significant other anymore, for whatever reason is. But those are the kinds of things that happen in divorce that a lot of times we don't even think about the effect that it has on the entire tribe of family members.
Do you think you can maintain a healthy relationship with ex in-laws?
Sure. Well, let me just say this. I have to step back, because I'm speaking from the mind of ex in-laws, but my in-laws are not ex, because I'm a widow. I'm not divorced, so that is a different kind of a thing. But I think that's possible. Like I've had family members who are divorced, and I'm still there. Here's how I see it. Especially if we get along, and that it was a mutual understanding to divorce. But if me and that person are friends, we love each other, we've gained a mutual respect for each other, and the marriage didn't break down in such a way where there's animosity, that person is really still going to be your family member in some way. You're not going to just excommunicate a person that you've loved for however many years or whatever time it was that you put into that relationship.
Mm-hmm.
But what's different is when you have like those nasty divorces. Like if you have a nasty divorce and somebody has done something to somebody that you love, I don't know how you're going to be friends with that. I guess I would have to do a lot of praying, but I'm not gonna be too friendly with somebody who did something to my brother or my sister.
Right. I
So
don't know. I think that's interesting. So I chuckled a little bit because Beatrice said I divorced the whole entire family. You just threw the whole family away. No, but I get that. I think you're right though. I think it really depends on the kinds of relationship that you had. Like I feel like, after my divorce, I think I don't know if I really feel like I divorced them. I don't know that I was ever that close to them to begin with. And to Kim's point, right, we had no children involved, we had no mutual interest, we had no mutual friends. So it was like you take your suitcase and go your way, I'll take mine and go mine. And that was pretty much the end of that. I feel like with this marriage it would be a little bit different because I have created a relationship with my in-laws now. So yeah, I think it has more to do with the kind of relationship you had to begin with, especially if you don't live close together,
mhm,
right? Because I mean, I think that would also have something like a lot of my in-laws right now live out of state, so that would create a different dynamic as well.
mhm.
So ladies, what happens? What happens, right? The topic, when marriage goes left, it's over. First of all, let's talk about what those deal breakers are, and then what does your life look like? What does that path look like when it's done and you have to rebuild? How do you do that?
Well, let's just talk about too some of the repercussions of broken marriages: stress and anxiety, depression, familiar pressures and stressors. Sorry, stereotypical behavior of society, stigma, changes in your sleep, dieting patterns. These are all things that you can find on onlinetherapy.com. The negative effects of other family members, especially if there are small children or teenagers involved. And here's a big one that I think that people forget to talk about. Not as much today as it was, in a bygone era, but financial collapse was one of the biggest things that women had to deal with when they divorced their husbands, because for the most part, husbands were primary breadwinners. And when they left the marriage, some women were left so deeply in poverty that they became homeless. So those are the kinds of things that I think that people don't think about when they think about divorce a lot of times. And a lot of the reasons why some people even stay in bad
I
relationships.
was gonna say that because they can't afford to start over.
Mm-hmm. Read this one.
On the screen, it would be hard for me because I was friends with my sister in law first. Yeah, see, that's hard.
Mm-hmm.
Those babies are too cute. I'm sorry, I was distracted by the babies, Sonya. They are adorable.
They are.
But yeah, I mean, that's different. And this is your sister-in-law. So what happens if you and the brother fall out? I'll wait. Sonya, look, Sonya, I'll wait.
But that's what she's saying, though. It's not the brother. Well, I'm not sure if she's talking about her husband or her sister's husband. No, it's got to be her husband. So she was friends with the sister-in-law before the husband.
Right.
So she wouldn't fall out with the brother. She would fall out with the husband.
Well, her husband, that's what I'm saying.
Oh, but you said brother. Sorry.
Well, her sister-in-law would be, I'm assuming her brother's, let's just wait for her to answer. I'm assuming that her husband, Sonia's husband, she was friends with her husband's sister first. That's how I'm reading it.
That's how.
So I'm saying if, hypothetically speaking, of course, right? I ain't speaking no negativity in existence. We just talking about what we talking about. But I'm just saying, hypothetically, if you were to, you know, fall out with your husband, do you think you and the sister will still be cool? That's my question.
Okay, that's it.
So, how do you repair that? How do you repair that? But it was, Nikki, you brought up something that I didn't even think about when you were reading that list. You talked about weight loss and not sleeping because, again, we don't talk about the emotional issues that a lot of people go through as a result of, different kinds of traumatic situations that happen in people's lives. So, like, that's a thing. That's a real thing, right? And that's not a sign of weakness, ladies. That just means you're human. Um, how do you come up from that? How do you rebuild?
Because I always think of divorce in this manner. Now, I've never been divorced, so I can't say, but I've had some breakups, before I got married, I've had breakups with my husband that felt like a death. So in my mind, I feel like a divorce is like losing somebody to death, but yet they're still alive walking on earth. And you still have to deal with all the grief of death. But this person is just, they're here. They're not going to be in your life anymore.
Right.
So that's how I kind of looked at divorce in some ways, is that it could almost feel like a death to some people, which is another reason that makes it so hard and so depressing and so difficult to get through when you've been divorced.
I think it also has to do with who initiated it. Cause
Mhm.
I'm sitting back and I'm thinking, well, what's wrong? I think I only had one relationship that took me all the way down. The rest, I was like, bye.
I think not only who initiates it, but why, what happened, what was the exact breakdown? Because I think that a lot of divorces are more amicable when there's a realization that maybe we've grown apart and we just don't see eye to eye, and we can agree to separate and part ways, as opposed to something like infidelity where there's been a betrayal in the
Right.
marriage,
Hmm.
or if somebody's just done something that any type of betrayal. Because if you could be betraying somebody by stealing from them.
Right.
Anything that's a betrayal of the covenant, as somebody said earlier, the covenant
Hmm.
is something that people just have a hard time with. It's more difficult because a betrayal feels like something you're doing to me, as opposed to we just are not.
Not getting along. We don't see eye to eye. We don't agree. A betrayal is like you set out to hurt me in some way.
Exactly. It
I
don't,
get that.
you know. Yeah.
Yeah, I get that.
Yep. I don't tongue and teeth fall out siblings. I didn't get that one, but
I don't know, Stacey. You have to clarify that one, Stacey. And where do divorced women go in ministry? Wow. Wow. There is the singles ministry, there's the couples ministry for married women, but if you divorce to no fault of your own, where is that ministry for divorced women? We stand alone.
wow, that's interesting. I never thought
It's
of that.
I never thought of it either.
I never
I
thought of
think I think what we do end up doing, Keisha, is we create our own ministries, right? Amongst our interpersonal friends. Like I feel like you create this safe haven, if you will, amongst people that you can go to, that you could talk to or whatever. But you're right, there's no, not that I know of.
Mhm. I mean, it kind of lends itself to one of the things one of the things that are on the list about the stigma and discrimination. I'm so sorry. I apologize. I'm having a hard time breathing today. I
Don't
think it's
worry about it.
the humidity. But anyway, the discrimination and the stigma around divorce, I think that religion and some churches and ministries are kind of just catching up to where they should be regarding divorce, because in the church for a long time divorce is like a taboo. It's like not supposed to be done. So I think that maybe people who are divorced should do more, creating more ministries and bring it into houses of worship, because nowadays, like you said, after COVID, I think the divorce rate might be higher than we ever seen before. And people are going to need a place to go to be able to express those things that, took place in their marriages, or the things that are bothering them now, how to get back on their feet, how to even date again, if you want to date again. So it's going to be a lot of work that needs to be done in the area of divorce, especially for women. I
Right.
think that women have a harder time with divorce and going back out there than men. I mean, I'm just speculating. I don't know for sure. I haven't read any statistics, but it just seems to me that men are always. It's easier for them to get right back into another relationship.
Because of the stigma, I think a lot of times, right? I think it's because of the
Thanks, Vanessa.
she says she ready to start the divorce ministry on how to rebuild.
That's perfect. That's an excellent idea. So look, I'm with you, cousin.
That is a really good idea. I really never even thought about it,
Hmm.
but it's true.
Yep.
How would you start it, Keisha? Like how what kind of well, I guess you answered it. How to rebuild. I was gonna say what kind of like feedback, what kind of support, what kind of advice.
Hmm.
Yeah, see, Beatrice said her brother and his wife are gonna be starting a marriage ministry, which which we have. To Keisha's point, we have the marriage and the singles ministry and all that kind of stuff, but nothing if you want to start over.
Hmm. Right, right. And
That's interesting.
I think as a complement to a marriage ministry, a divorce ministry would be necessary, because sometimes people need to know how to divorce without it being, so disruptive to their lives and the lives of their families, without so much pain and anger that's attached or associated. Sometimes people need counseling in that area, because I know if I felt betrayed, it would be very difficult for me to just end the marriage without getting some kind of help, talking to somebody, even if it was just friends.
Right.
Because my temper, I'd be ready to get you.
Yeah. Well, there's that, right? So hi, Octavia. Look at my pretty girl. Hi, Octavia. Octavia says, I think the rebuilding should take place prior to a divorce. We should constantly be working on self and be conscious of not losing track of that. But see, I think that's it. I think that's it. I think that has a lot to do with it. Far too often we get into these relationships and we lose ourselves. And that was kind of sort of what I wanted to I think I was trying to kind of talk to in the beginning. Like you can't be so all consumed that you just lose track of who you are, your own individuality as a person. So I think that's an awesome statement.
I agree. I agree, but there still has to be something in place for that percentage of people that just, for whatever reason, it's just not working out. The hope, the most optimal idea of a marriage would be to go into it with both eyes open,
Right.
with all the counseling and all the necessary preparation there is. But it just happens that
It didn't work. I get that.
it don't
I
always.
get that. And I think this is your point where you're saying like sometimes, just sometimes, there could be such thing as an amicable divorce,
Mhm.
right?
Exactly.
There's no animosity. We didn't do anything to hurt each other, but it's just not working, and we'll be better off separate.
Exactly.
Because I want to do my thing and you want to do your thing, so let's just do our own thing separately Look,
Mhm.
you take the dog, I'm taking the car,
Right, right,
and
right.
just call it even.
So you want to read that one?
Talk about first renewing your mindset so you won't repeat the same mistakes and learn from your own mistakes. 101 accountability. Yeah,
Hmm.
yeah. We got to start doing that. Listen. I wish somebody started class about how to get into that mode before all of this happens, right? Because we don't talk about that anymore either.
Hmm. I think a lot of what we face um, as people in general, problems in homes and families and community, is that we don't talk, we don't discuss, and we don't map out and strategize beforehand whatever it is that we want to do or even just bring to the world. We
Right,
do that. And because we don't do that, we find ourselves playing catch up after we already in the mess.
right,
And so I think that's going to be, paramount for us to do, period, is to just start really doing some inner work, some self dialogue, reaching out to all of the different ministries, all the different friends, all the different places where we could find support to build and build properly, raising kids properly. All of that stuff matters in this world. And when we find ourselves trying to play catch up after we've been doing so bad for so long, it's very hard to fix. There's this saying, it's better to raise a healthy man than to fix a broken one. And so that goes for men, women, children. It's better for us to enter things from a standpoint of health than to fix things that are when they've gone wrong.
right. So my mind is really racing tonight. So Martina said oftentimes you're somewhat ostracized when you divorce. So you mentioned the stigma. I'm just pulling this all together in my own mind. I want us to get away from that. I think it's safe to say that everybody wants to live an upright life, right? But you gonna have to live your life for you. When you start getting caught up in trying to satisfy everybody else's expectations and everybody else's lifestyles and everybody else deems appropriate for you, you find yourself in a mess of a mess.
Mhm.
Because I mean, at some point, you can't compare my situation to anybody else's. You can't compare my marriage to nobody else's. You can't compare my household. You can't compare my finances. We got to stop feeling like we have to live up to these expectations of what people outside of our house and our marriages and our life. You have to do what's best for you in your house with your husband, your wife, your kids. I remember growing up, my mother used to always be like, I used to be like, God, everybody else could go to Miss Hicks' party. Everybody else could do this, and they not even leaving until 11. My mother used to be like, I don't care what they doing. I'm telling you what you doing,
Mhm.
right? And that's how it worked in her house. Okay. And while you was living in her house, you was gonna follow her rules. And when you got grown enough that you felt like you wanted to make your own rules, that meant it was time for you to move out.
Mhm.
And so we got to start being accountable for ourselves, health wise and other ways, and when I say healthy, to your point, it's got to be mentally. We got to take care of ourselves mentally. We got to do what's right for us and just like not worry about what other people say. And stop telling your girlfriends everything. And so they could turn around and be like, oh, girl, you should leave him. You should do. No, no, because you wouldn't do it. Don't tell me to do it.
Mhm.
Now, when I'm sitting looking crazy in divorce court, you all snugged up with your boo, watching movies and eating now laters. Meanwhile,
Netflix and chilling.
yeah, I'm running around at Home Depot parking lot trying to snatch me a man, and I'm out here crazy. Don't you do it? Don't do it.
Right. But Beatrice says also, when a marriage ends in divorce, what part you played in it. That's another part that people have to really consider, because I don't care how great you are in a marriage, what you've done to contribute or keep the marriage healthy. there's always some part in there that you played in it, whether it's allowing things to happen or whether it's just simply not understanding a person. Things that people do are not necessarily for you.
Right.
So we have to understand that just because this is how they do it, this is how they raise kids, this is how they love, this is what they do, that may not be you, but you've been accepting it for all of this time and you've been allowing it. And then all of a sudden you realize, that's not really what I want.
Right.
All of a sudden you want a divorce, or
Right.
somebody wants to divorce you because they're not getting what they're supposed to be getting. There is, I just, like you said, Michelle, there are so many layers to divorce and why people get divorced and what happens when people do get divorced. That, I think that it should be definitely, like Beatrice said, it should be a ministry that prepares people for what could happen in a marriage, good and bad, that people can go to and get information and learn how to be in a marriage. Because, like Vanessa said, I don't care what nobody say. You can have the best marriage going, but it's still work.
Work.
It's work. It's work when
Work.
you come in here. I don't care how good your husband is. I don't care how good he is.
Work.
None of that. There's days when you're going to come in the house and look at that fool and be like, oh, what am I in for?
Make you want to stab him in the throat.
You much want to make him stab him in the throat, but you get over it. That's just a temporary emotion.
Exactly.
Figure out.
I tell you one thing though. I tell you one thing. Marriage makes you truly vulnerable.
Yes, it should though. It
It
should.
makes you, if you love your partner, because if you don't, I feel like you'll just wind up treating them any old kind of way, and then wherever, however it work out, it just work out. But if you being honest and you being open, and like Vanessa said, and you doing your work, it makes you truly vulnerable because you almost have to stop
Mhm.
and sit back and you force yourself to really examine you. What did I do? So to Beatrice's point, how did I play a role in that?
Right.
Because quiet as it's kept. I know y'all don't ever see because I'm just so sweet. But let my father tell it. I could be evil. That's what my father say. I have my moments where I could be moody. And I believe that. As I've gotten older, I believe that. And so I have admitted, I have accepted the fact that there are days when I'm not the easiest person in the world to get along with.
Exactly.
But
Exactly.
God bless me with the sweetest husband because he'll just go and go the other way.
Right. Keep it moving.
But you come back, but you got to be willing to put in the work. But then you got to be able to really be honest with yourself. You got to look yourself. Nikki, I'm so glad we having these conversations because it's like we always say. You and I talk all the time, and we decided to do this as a result of so many offline conversations that we had. But I'm glad we have this space that we can kind of talk about it because I hope that the ladies understand that you're not by yourself. Like we all have these moments. Like before I got married the first time, I really did. I was a little delusional. I'm not gonna lie. I thought every day was gonna be perfect from there on out. Nobody told me. And I told y'all when I got divorced, I came back, I said, I blame all y'all. Because y'all didn't tell me. You didn't tell me that I was gonna walk in and literally want to stab him in his throat. You didn't tell me that. You didn't tell me that those things were normal to feel that way. But this is marriage. This is what you do. And so the second time around, I think I got it a little bit more together. But it is what it is, ladies, and we're responsible for so much. We have to do so many things that we need this platform. We need to be able to lean on each other. We need each other to say, no, 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 no. That's what it is. No, you're right. That's really what happens. And so this is how we have to, we have to press on.
All right. Yeah. Uh,
Martina said, throw those rose colored glasses in a dumpster and put in serious work to fortify a respectful relationship partnership. But here's the thing, that's the key word. The key word is that one word at the end. It's a partnership. I can't do all the work by myself.
right.
So I need to be doing this work with somebody else who's committed.
Right. But I
Because if
think
not, you'll just be spinning your wheels.
right. She's right though about those throwing those rose-colored glasses in a dumpster. You said it earlier that some women, not all, you know, we really were done a disservice by making by people really giving us these stories that being married and having a family and kids, and that this was like you being like Cinderella being saved by the hero or something. And
Yeah.
women really did grow up with this image of being. I know women who went to college specifically, not just to get a degree, but specifically to find husbands.
Mm.
So that was the fantasy. Okay, this degree is gonna make me look better for and to a man, instead of going, to get whatever it is that you wanted to get from the knowledge and information. But that's the storyline we were fed about having husbands. And it really, trust me, having a husband, like Vanessa said, I'm just gonna go back to that. It is work, honey. It's work, especially, again, I'm not divorced, but that sickness and health is a real serious piece.
Oh
My
yes.
sick. I literally took care of him till his death for 7 months, literally having to do everything for him, everything. And if you're not ready for that kind of a commitment, if you don't love someone that much, you should not even entertain the thought of being married.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's not like, you wake up, you might be next to let's see, what's her name, Tyra Banks one day, and the next day you might be sitting next to Freddie, what's his name, Freddie Jackson. Same person, but they don't went from Tyra Banks to Freddie Jackson.
Oh my God, that's a drastic.
But that's how looks change. Looks change, weight change. Everything about people change as they get old. There's one thing in life we can be guaranteed, and that is change. So if you're not willing to deal with somebody in their changes, then maybe you should not even consider being married, because that's change is a part of life.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, you can't be selfish.
can't be selfish. No.
And not be selfish when you call yourself one of it's a mess.
Yeah.
It
And
could be a
that's
good mess, but it is something. You can't be selfish. And I think that's another one of the challenges. If it's all about you all the time,
I
you're
was going
gonna
to
hit a wall.
a big deal breaker. It's
Yep.
people being selfish in a marriage. Um, I could admit my first marriage ended. It was me. I wasn't ready. See, and that's what accountability is.
Yep.
To know what role you played and why things didn't work out. And a lot of us sometimes, unfortunately, we're not ready to admit it. Michelle, could you read so I could read a little bit?
Mine's always says, I love this. I read this one before. She talk about her husband always say to her, "You can't argue by yourself." He not an arguer, so he gonna let her go on and on and on. And that's the worst thing. Ain't that horrible?
Yeah, I know that firsthand. Yeah, because
Not gonna do it.
I'm
Yes.
yeah, and my husband will walk right out that door and let me argue by myself. I'd be so mad. Yeah,
That's a mess. You can't argue by yourself, so I'm gonna leave you to your own devices.
yeah,
I am Thaisa Lee. Pre-counseling is very important. It is, but you got to get a good counselor too.
a good,
I'll just say that.
a good.
You got to have a good counselor. One who's willing to really explore. Because I feel like a lot of times, and I mean, I don't know, but I feel like a lot of times they just scratch the surface. But you got to be willing and able to really have those hard conversations, you know, going in.
You also got to be willing to accept whatever it is that the counselor says. I'm not gonna name names, but I'll never forget this lady that I know who went in to get married with this young man, and the counselor said, "He not for you. He not for you." And let me tell you,
Did
honey,
she leave him?
she left him, and then a year later, she was married to somebody else. How about it? So sometimes, we go in there for counseling. We love each other. We want to be with each other, but that counselor might see something that's not for you, and you have to really be big. You put your big girl panties on and really be able to accept that. And that's a hard thing to accept, especially if you've invested time, energy, maybe even some money. You might have had things all planned. You might have had your wedding dress and your date picked out, everything. But if you go to somebody and they tell you, look, this might not work, you got to be open enough to listen. And I know people need to learn hard lessons, because I've had friends that, look, I'm not, you know me, Michelle. Look, as Richard Corley said in that in Harlem Nights, I'm an honest hoe. Always is honest. So you know, when you talk to me and ask me something, I'm gonna tell you the truth as I see it.
Right.
You don't have to agree, but I'm gonna just tell you the truth. And I've had girlfriends that I said, listen, honey, that one is not for you. You're a good girl, but let him go. Did they listen? Not always, but they had to find out on their own.
Right.
But you know, sometimes you have to go outside, and somebody outside of you, especially if they love you. Right. Don't go to anybody that you just know and ask questions about your business. Please don't do that. But somebody who you know love and cares about you, sometimes you have to ask them. Just like sometimes, you know, Michelle, I'll call you in a minute and be like, well, did I make this decision right? You think, am I wrong? Because you need clarity sometimes, but it has to be from somebody you care about. But people who care about you will usually be honest with you.
Right. Right.
But don't go to them after. Go to them before.
Yeah. Well, but the same thing happened to me, but I went after the fact. You know, we went to counseling on our way out, but we went to a couple of sessions and the counselor was like, y'all just go ahead on and get divorced.
No, he didn't.
Yes, she did.
And sometimes you just have to be grown enough to handle that kind of news, because it's not easy, especially when you love somebody. That's not an easy thing to hear, but sometimes people, they just know.
Right.
And you know when things don't mesh, you know when things don't look right, you know when things don't sound like. And I think another piece that people don't pay attention to before they get married, excuse me, you should know the person's background. You should know how they were raised, what's in their family, crazy in the family. And I'm not talking about mental illness crazy. I'm just talking,
I know.
You know, all those kinds of things. You should know that beforehand, because you don't want to get into a situation where you've fallen in love or even had children with somebody that you are introducing things to your family, your household dynamic that is not for you, that will not serve you. So, you know, it's very important that we think about stuff like that beforehand.
She said, oh my God, that was me. My pastor said he's not the man for you, but no, I didn't listen. I wanted to still marry him because he was the father of my children.
And I'm going to say a quick story. I don't share this with everybody, but my closest friends know this. And it's a very difficult story for me. And we're going to get out of here after I share it. But I always tell people obedience is better than sacrifice. Because before I got married, God spoke to me clearly as day and told me my husband was not for me. That's what he told me. I don't know why, but that's what he told me. And I heard that voice as
clear as day.
Clear as you talking to me right now. I heard it. But I had a child with this man. I was deeply in love with him. He was my first boyfriend. There was just like, I just knew this man was, there was also a bit of, you know, if I can't have him, I ain't want nobody else to have him. It was a bit of that too. But I was being disobedient to the Spirit of God that told me that that wasn't the man for me. And now I'm not saying that I caused his death or his death was my fault at all.
Right, I get what you're saying.
But what I do believe sometimes is when God says that this is not for you, he'll do whatever he needs to do to remove it from you. And I think that besides death, I could not even see myself without my husband. So I don't know what it was that God had on my life, what kind of calling that I was supposed to do. I don't know. I don't know if I fulfilled it or not. All I know is that God said that that was not for me. He made it so that that was not for me. And I regret it till this day, because I wonder, you know, could my husband, would he have been? I don't know. I don't know. All I know is obedience is better than sacrifice. And when somebody tell you something, you should do it.
Well, it depends on who telling you though.
Exactly. Well, we discussed that already. You're
Right.
not.
Well, it depends on who telling you. But I think that a lot of times, and I know we got to get out of here, but I think a lot of times too, we find ourselves in situations where we want to push through, right? We have our own agenda, and just like Keisha said, and just like your story right now, a lot of times many of us do have signs. We know going in, this ain't really gonna work, or it's gonna be a lot of pressure on me to make it work. You can't push for things to happen if it's not organic and it's not ordained.
Exactly.
So
Exactly.
that's where we are. Another hour in the books where we trying to solve the world's problems for black women everywhere.
And it sure did go by fast, didn't it? Right?
It always does. Every week it seems like it's faster and faster and faster and faster.
Because we spend it
But
with these ladies that we love so much. But I know some of you are prepped and ready to watch the debate. So we're not going to hold you too long. We just want to say thank you, thank you, thank you. Because you could be spending your hour doing anything in the world, but you chose to spend it with us. And we appreciate that.
so much.
And
Hi
we,
Taylor. Hi Nicole.
yes, hi. And we hope that you've got something out of it, if nothing more but a chance to release or relate to someone here on this broadcast. We thank you again, Michelle. Any last words?
Thank you, ladies. You know how we feel about y'all. Look forward to seeing you here every week and all of your feedback. You ladies are the bomb. Yeah. I'm dating myself. That's red alert.
It sure is. But thank you much. Thank you so much, ladies, for hanging in there with us. Next week, I'll get on my pump before I get online, and I hope I can breathe a little bit better. But we love you so much for staying with us and hanging with us. Don't forget to go to my YouTube channel, which is Cheryl Ward. Hit like and subscribe, and come back next week. We love you. Good night. Enjoy.
Good night.
Try to enjoy because we don't know what's going to happen tonight. Love you guys.